Hey drivers, here's the thing. The Moseyhome is awesome. A lot of folks have expressed interest in seeing more about it, so I'm going to show you the more practical side of owning and driving this thing. This is the hottest time of year, so really this trip is not so much of a joyride. The traveling part of it is going to be all about survival. This is a 48-year-old vehicle, and we have to make sure that it is ready to go. And as we make the trip in this insane heat, we're going to have to take it easy and keep a close eye on the oil temps and the water temps and how the brakes are doing and all of that stuff. So we're going to immerse ourselves in getting the camper ready, and I'll take you along on the ride so you can see what it's like to drive an almost 50-year-old motorhome in this insane Florida heat. We've got a 400-mile round trip, so we better be ready. Right, Rody? The thing about working on this Moseyhome is it's always a production. The simple things that we take for granted on our little V-dubs becomes a much bigger task with all of the weight and size involved. I mean, just the fact that I can't get it into the garage, like not even close, gives you a sense on the size differential here and how that scales up all of the efforts that we put into doing even the most basic things. We're going to jack up one side. The reason we have to do that, which is its own procedure, is because I need to get to the master cylinder. We're going to bleed the brakes today. It hasn't happened in a few years, and I want to keep some fresh brake fluid in there, so we're going to get into this project. To get to the master cylinder, we have to take off the front left wheel. That means jacking things up, securing it on a jack stand, and going from there. We'll be using the power bleeder. This is actually why I originally bought the thing, was on this vehicle. So there's a special adapter for it on this old GM Master reservoir. So we'll hook up the power bleeder, probably put 2, maybe 3 quarts of fluid through this monster and see what it looks like coming out. While I have the air hose out, I'm going to go ahead and check the tire pressure. 6 wheels on this one, plus 2 airbags, and it appears one of our airbags has a leak, so we might be addressing that as well. I check the air pressure before every trip. I don't care if I just got back from one. Every time I'm here and I'm leaving, I don't leave without checking the tire pressure. There's pressure monitoring systems for that, but to me it's just another thing to fail. I think my probabilities are better by my judgment if I just check frequently. On the rear wheels we have a bit of an issue because it's a dually. So these 2 rims are facing each other if you haven't messed around with a dually before. That means that this valve stem is pointing in, and that's fine. I just had to find an air chuck that would allow me to reach it. Now there's more complicated systems that involve some plumbing and bringing the Schrader valve from the other wheel this way. I like to keep things as simple as possible, just to keep it serviceable, particularly in an emergency situation if I'm stranded somewhere. So the inside is exactly the same. That allows me to swap rims around as I need to, and so I just reach straight through to access that one. It means that when I put the wheels on, at least this outside wheel, I have to make sure and clock it such that one valve stem is here and one valve stem is exactly opposite. If we're really splitting hairs, that's going to keep things just the tiniest bit more balanced, but the big deal is that I can access it through here. If I was off by 1/8 of a turn, notice the 8 lugs here, right? I wouldn't be able to access that because it'd be behind this part of the rim. So it's just something to keep in mind when I'm putting the rims back on the vehicle after servicing or new tires or whatever. All of these go to 60 psi. None of them were low this time, which is what I want to see. I have had a situation where a metal valve stem, which I think I'm moving away from using, but the seals on a metal valve stem started to settle a little bit, and it becomes really noticeable when there's a change in the weather, particularly in the fall. When it goes from this heat to cooler weather, that'll contract a little bit, and I've had to bring a socket around and tighten it up after finding a slow leak. It's always fixed it. I used to use a standard bottle jack for lifting the camper up, but all that weight made it a lot of work, so I felt like I was splurging when I bought this little gem, and I can tell you I will never look back again. This pneumatic bottle jack has just been wonderful. It takes every bit of this to get the tire off the ground. So here's the kind of thing that I run into. I have the bottle jack going sideways because it interferes with the exhaust if I go straight on. I'd like to put my jack here, and I'd like to raise that all the way up, but I can't. I need to go just a little higher, but I'm all the way up. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let it down and see if I can screw that out a little bit. Everything is a production. I love this thing, but working on it is more complicated than our beloved VWs. Okay, barely made it. Now we have decent access to our master cylinder. I don't have any reason to believe that there's a problem. This is really just a flush, and the idea is to avoid problems. However, it's been a long time since I've opened this, so I just want to make sure it's clean. And our first step once we open this is to remove all of the old fluid and top it up with new. Then we'll start pumping it through with the power bleeder. Now before I go any further, there is a proportioning valve that needs to be locked down with this little doohickey. So I got to take a thing out, insert this down in there, and that keeps it from locking off, if I remember right, the rear brakes when there's pressure during the bleeding process, which would stop everything. So we're going to lock it, I think, in the open position with this thing, and then we'll start really messing around with the reservoir and the power bleeder and the adapter and the clamps. A lot more than just working on a little Beetle. I pulled the front wheels right to the edge of the concrete so that the front end would have enough clearance for me to get under here, because when it's on level ground I can't crawl under this part of the vehicle. I'd have to raise it some way. The thing we need is right up there. This is one of the many things that I replaced, so I need to get that connector off and then remove the thing that the connector is on, and that's where this lock goes. We've been working at this a while to get the right combination, but I think we're about to get this little piece out so that we can get the little lock piece in. There it is. Some kind of a switch, I guess. I don't know. But there's lines and stuff in the way and I can't see any of it. So this was the magic combination. This and a 9/16 inch combo wrench to get in there. A deep socket wouldn't fit. There were lines in the way. There was not enough room around it to get the wrench on it. But this little thing, these are great about once every 2 or 3 years. Absolutely indispensable. It puts a little hex head on the top of whatever socket that you stuff it into, and I found them in a set of 3, 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, and 1/2 inch, and so these go with me. All right, now we're going to put the little doohickey in there. Got the thing in there, but I'm going to be honest with you, this took about 45 minutes. If I had to do it again, I think I'd do it quicker. It's been years and I've only done it once before, really. But now we're almost to the point where we can start. Okay, hopefully no surprises in here. Doesn't look bad, except that the rear is really low. Okay, let's get that out of there and we'll start pumping some fresh in. I'm going to take this opportunity to wipe down the rim of the reservoir a little bit, and if I get some in there, it'll be before I remove all of that fluid. This fluid doesn't look bad, but it isn't clear, and that's what we're going to be putting back in. So we'll be better off. The thing about fluid is that it collects moisture, and that's how we rust out our steel lines, is with the moisture that's inside. I could just push all of this fluid through, but no need. I'm going to keep pushing fluid through until I get clear coming out, so it'd just prolong that part of the process. Might as well remove it here and only push clear fluid through from the start. There's some chains for this, little chains and hooks, which I find to be kind of a pain. So I just carry around a set of big C-clamps to do this part, and I find that seals it pretty well. Don't see any leaks. I think we're good. Okay, just like normal, we're gonna go to the right rear, furthest away from this point, and let the fluid flow. Now it starts to feel a little bit more normal. Okay, another tricky part. I want to put a hose on the end of that, but it's really hard to get to. Not just with the wrench, but with a hose. Okay, so that's loose-ish. Yeah, oh, it's already flowing. Shoot. Okay, I kind of have a line on it now. I've made a huge mess, but what I really need here is to look at the fluid. I need to be able to see the fluid coming out. We're getting some bubbles. The fluid doesn't look terrible, but That's a good number of bubbles, so I'm kind of glad we're doing this, I guess. I think we are in a new fluid now. It's such a production to set all of this stuff up. I'm going to go ahead and just let it go a little longer, just to be sure. I'd hate to stop too soon and have to do all of this again. Okay, we're locked down. I think we did it. 1 down, 3 to go, but this was going to be the hardest one. Because I have the front left jacked up, I have the least amount of space to get under here. And of course it's the furthest away, so it takes the longest. This is way easier than those ones in the rear. This one being the shortest line cleared up pretty quick. So easiest for last. No bubbles in the front. Plenty of bubbles in the rear, but none in the front. Okay, released the pressure on the power bleeder, took the lid off. Actually, the reservoirs are way too full, so I'm going to remove some of that. Now that I know the magic handshake on this proportioning valve thing, this should be a lot easier. So I'm going to put this little thing back in. Okay, that's going to be it. I have no idea if this works. I imagine it's a warning light thing. Okay, once I got the socket out of the way, that little connector went on there a whole lot better. I think we're all set. We got the brakes taken care of. The brakes are good. Glad I did it. Got some old fluid out of there, and actually some bubbles on the rear brake lines, so that's good. All the other fluids topped off and or checked, or both. So the vehicle is ready to go. I've been running the AC to cool down the stuff that's in here. Now that sounds weird, but the interior of this camper in direct sun this time of year gets to about 115 degrees. And so that means everything inside here is 115 degrees. So I started the AC yesterday to cool down the interior objects in the camper. The name of the game today is safety because it's very hot. I'm in an old vehicle that runs hot just naturally. So I need to watch the engine oil temp, the water temp. I need to listen to the vehicle as I go down the road, and I need to keep the dogs safe. I am not going to be able to keep this space comfortable while we're driving. That may also sound pretty weird, but I'm going to run the generator so that I can run the AC, and the best that we can get out of that situation is just safe. It won't be 115 degrees. It'll be probably in the low 90s or high 80s as we go down the road. But it works. One of the great things about this camper is what it allows me to do. It's neat to have a vintage camper and share it with people, and I love that. I love the questions. It's all great, but the activities that it allows me to take part in with a little bit of sacrifice and work is really the best part of this thing. So we're going to do that today. So we'll get changed over from shore power to genset power and then ease on out of here. First thing is to turn the AC off. I have this power device here that's kind of nice. It's surge protection and it has a delay on it. So once it sees power, it'll wait about a minute and a half before it clicks on everything else. That way we can warm up the generator before loading things down. And then once I see that, I'll turn the AC back on. I run this fan because the AC blows most of the air to the rear. That's stinky that it does that, but it does, and so this is the solution. Hey, Rodeo. Fancier RVs have a transfer switch that does this automatically, but I kind of like old school and easily serviceable stuff so I don't get stranded somewhere. So I just plug, like this is the output of the generator, so I just plug the RV into the generator when that's what I need to do. Thank you for your help. I appreciate that. He's a good helper. I like to do a quick walk around just to make sure I'm not missing anything, and sometimes I am. I did service the generator, cleaned up this area and changed the oil. So just doing a quick check here to make sure that we're topped up, because it is about to see some hard service. It's a little bit high, but we'll go with it. Got to be careful about that because the oil will foam up and doesn't lubricate very well when it's full of air. These RV specific generators aren't cheap, but they're worth it because they're reliable and quiet, relatively speaking. Those open frame box store generators, not good for this. Oh, Rhodey, it's gonna get noisy, buddy. Yeah, hey buddy, you probably want to come out of there. It's gonna get noisy. Come on. Come on, buddy. Good job. Yeah, I don't want to scare the puppers. Okay, it's gonna get noisy. There we go. We'll be staring at this gauge and this gauge a lot on this trip. Okay, my power is on. All the stats look good. Let's go ahead and get the AC back on. And we'll see that current draw jump up. Compressor just kicked in. We'll lose some volts too. There you go, 18 amps of current draw. That's more than a household circuit. Generator's good. It's kept up with the voltage output despite the heavy load. So all that looks really good. All right, we're gonna go down the road, boys. Already getting a little sweaty. Gonna stay like this for the next 30 hours or so. All right, let's go down the road. One thing about an old vehicle is when you hear, see, smell, or feel something, you stop right away and check into it. I'm seeing a lot of smoke. That is oil smoke. I think it's probably just burning off of the generator. Actually, it's coming out of the tailpipe. So I need to look into this. If being overfilled is why that's happening. I wonder if that's just all going through the breather. Yep. So I'm over full, and it's just cycling back through the engine. I mean, I could just let it burn off, but I don't know how overfull it is, really. It didn't seem this bad. So I'm gonna let this settle. I'll check the level, and I may drain just a little bit. Okay, so here's the problem that I'm facing. It is now getting hot inside the RV because the AC is not running. I'm right in front of the house. I could pull back and hook back up to shore power, but what I'm gonna try and do is resolve this quickly, and hopefully we don't have to back up into the yard again. But it's gonna have to go quick, so if I run into trouble, that's what we'll have to do. So the oil looks the same as it did before, barely over full, but what I'm dealing with is a little bit of a pitch. I happen to stop where things are pitched down and to the right, and this breather here is in the valve cover, so it wouldn't take too much of an overfill and too much of a pitch to the right for this to happen. So I really don't think I need to pull that much oil out. In fact, since I'm not level here, I could very easily pull too much oil. This thing does not use, like, not even a quart of oil, so it's going to be really sensitive to small amounts of oil. So I have a syringe that'll put a tube on. I'm just going to see if I can get down in there and steal just a little bit of oil. See if that makes a difference. No more smoke. This is good. It's been running a few minutes. The AC is running. No smoke. So that's all it was. We could have just let that go. In hindsight, I could have just let that burn off, but not healthy for plugs. And I didn't want to take that risk because the generator is going to be an important part of our success on this trip. I do have dash AC, and it is super nice to have cool air blowing on my face, in this weather anyway. But it doesn't cool down the RV, so it increases the chances that we be in a dangerous situation, particularly for the dogs. This is essentially a car, and it heats up like a car does, so we're gonna move cautiously forward. Good job. All right, we're gonna go down the road. Yeah, we're gonna go down the road. It's gonna be funny. I got good doggies to do that with. So a little bit of reflection here. When I have an event, I need to work the task, but afterwards, I try to reflect and see what led to the situation, what I might do different moving forward. And, you know, for all that was at stake, when we saw smoke coming out of the tailpipe, is like, oh no, right at the beginning of our vacation, why me, and all this nonsense. You don't go there. That way you could see things clearly. And yes, it was something stupid, and yes, it was user error. I overfilled the oil. That's why all this happened in the first place. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong on older vehicles, and especially in an RV where there's so many systems being used at the same time. Like, I could have a plumbing leak right now. It's only as reliable as the operator. And so I like it when it's my fault, because I'm the easiest thing in the world for me to fix. I just have to make better choices. We're gonna keep our eyes and ears open and see if we can enjoy going down the road a little bit. Gonna watch those oil temps too. Here we go. That the water is a little hot, because I'm going about as fast as I want to according to my oil temps, and it's super hot outside, and I'm running the dash AC, so that radiator is seeing warm air coming out of the back of the condenser and the oil cooler. This is hard service for an old machine. I'm going just fast enough to not get run over any worse than usual on the highway, right? So I'm doing close to 55 miles an hour. Sometimes I back it down to 50 when I'm getting worried about a temperature or two. But this will work. I'll be a whole lot more comfortable when I get on back roads, which is always my preferred choice. So we have about 40 miles to go, and we'll be on Highway 17, goes right down through the middle of Florida, and I'll be able to do 45 miles an hour safely in the heat of the day, and that'll make a big difference in how hard the engine is working. I think things go exponential. Once you get up past 45, 50 miles an hour, it's not a linear scale in terms of how hard it is to push air out of the way in front of a vehicle. And I think that's why you can see such big differences in miles per gallon when you back things down just, 5 miles an hour from whatever you were doing. So in about 40 miles or so, we'll be able to do that, and won't be asking so much of the vehicle. Gotten onto I-4, and it must be a little bit hotter here. I don't know if the new blacktop would have anything to do with that. I don't know, but it's running hotter. I'm looking forward to getting off of the highway so I can drive a little slower and keep these temps a little bit deeper in the comfort zone. In the back of my mind, I'm always thinking about an epic trip taking this Moseyhome across the country. I'd have to drive through the desert, I'd have to drive over mountain ranges. I just have to be good at doing this, and so this is an excellent exercise to help prepare me for hopefully doing that at some point. We're finally on these glorious back roads, and our temps are inching down just a little bit. This is where we like to be. Things are going relatively well. We have beautiful highway ahead of us, and the engine is running great. We're able to keep our temps in check. No complaints. However, we have developed a bit of an electrical issue with one of the coach DC circuits. It feeds the lights over there, which I could do without those. Including this main light here. but it also feeds the water pump. I've been replacing fuses to see if I can figure out when it happens and why it happens and that kind of a thing. This last time I smelt burning electrical stuff, and that's about the time that the fuse went, so I don't know if I was smelling the fuse getting hot or the thing that's causing the fuse to blow, but there's definitely an issue with the wiring, probably something stupid. We'll just see how difficult it is to find it. First place I'm gonna look is in the bench. Back there behind TIG is the bench where the DC power center is. And you might have noticed the red light indicating the circuit that has the blown fuse. So I'm going to take a look at that circuit on the fuse panel, see if it's a problem with the panel itself, and then I'll check the wiring behind it. The hunch tells me that we've got a short somewhere, an intermittent short. It seems like when I move the camper around, that's when the short happens. So I store things in that bench. Maybe we've abraded a wire, or there's something conductive that has slipped into the wrong spot. Always a possibility with the way that that is set up. So I need to get there so my host doesn't have to end up waiting on me. I'll deal with this a little bit later today. As for now, the fuse is blown, so the circuit is safe. And we'll just keep going down the road. I need the water pump, so let's take a look at this electrical issue. This is the circuit in question, and it keeps doing that. We're looking at the pink wire. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but right now I have the fuse out and the LED is just barely lit up. So the way this LED works is when this is open, it gets its ground through a load. So if I turn on a light switch that is on this circuit, the LED comes on, there's a little bit of current flow through that light, just enough to light up that LED. Now I just turn the light switch off and the LED is still on. So I may have just found the load that's the issue. This is the wiring that comes from that light, and when I mess around with it, I see that LED flicker a little bit. I'm going to focus on this when I have time a little later, and may just disable it to see if that stops my problem. You don't want to keep people waiting, so let's get back on the road. Okay, I have just a second to take a look at this. I have this side off. Let's go on the other side and get that other screw. I need to get the dog some water, and there's ways to get to it without the pump, but it would be a lot faster with the pump. There we go. This pink wire is going to be our hot. Let's see what happens now. I'm not expecting much here. Yeah, we have a short somewhere. We did a little bit more troubleshooting, found a workaround. Problem is, the wire goes from this panel into the wall. Here we can see it's the pink one. And then it splits somewhere up here. One split comes all the way across and into a panel, and this is where the water pump button is. That's the most important thing to me. The other split goes over this way to this light, and over this way to this light, and up here to this light. I believe there is a short, like maybe where this splice is, the wire nut came off or something like that, somewhere up here, and that means I'd have to take this whole cabinet down and then remove this aluminum that goes the length of the vehicle. This part here goes almost all the way from the front to the back. So it's a big piece of aluminum. I may be able to just pull it back a little bit But that's a pretty big operation getting into all of that. What I opted to do was tie into the power that comes over to this light, which is on a different circuit. So that was just spliced, comes back here. And I didn't have a fuse holder, but it was important to fuse the water pump. So there you go, those are some alligator clips and heat shrink, and a 10 amp fuse, which is appropriate for the water pump. And it goes over here to the back of the water pump switch. So I just took a shower. We are all set. Just missing a few lights, and that'll get us through the trip just fine. Now let's take a look at what we're here for. It's what we love to do, spend time with good VW folks and do some parts picking. You can check out the Bug Me video interview with none other than the Rick Higgins and the parts picking video here. Until next time, keep the project alive and drive the dream.